Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be learning about goat farming. Goat farming isn't something I thought I'd be doing say 6 months ago. Well, it sort of is. So you may recall around 5-6 months ago we did a farming video. It was regenerative farming, which is more about food obviously, but it still has animal involved. But you also may have noticed that we've gone on a lot of long trips, and around 4 months ago, I'd say 4 months ago, we went on a long trip to Queensland, New South Wales, all around there for around 2 months. And then just a few weeks ago, we came back from, well, not a few weeks ago, but we went like 2 months ago for 6 weeks to the same place again because we're looking for property to move, and we've sort of been hinting it in our past videos. And during those trips, especially the last trip, we've sort of 100% discovered what we want to move to, what type of property, and we know that we want to do some sort of farming. And the main property that we looked at, which is actually where we were when we uploaded those 2 videos recently, those forward driving ones, were on this property. And what they did there, they had thousands of feral goats there, which you could catch and sell, or farm them, breed them more to have for yourself to sell you more. But the whole idea sort of came to us, or to me mainly, through there. And these projects are supposed to be to actually help us in real life and to actually teach us things we want to know so we can use in real life scenarios. So my plan for the future is to do some sort of farming, and goat farming seems like a good one to start on, especially if you buy a property that has feral goats already on it. And everyone who knows a bit about farming keeps telling me, or everywhere I read, they say that goat farming is the new future because goats have just skyrocketed. And if you guys didn't know, goats are the most exported animal or meat in Australia, and Australia is the biggest exporter of them. And that's more to Middle Eastern countries, because obviously you don't see goats that often in Australian supermarkets. Anyway, today we're going to be learning about goat farming, how to goat farm. We're going to learn all about it, and a few different things in terms of catching goats. So let's get started. Alright, so we're going to be talking about all these things you see on the screen now. I'm not sure exactly what order. It really depends on how I decide to record it, but these are all the topics. So trapping goats, we're going to be talking about how we're going to trap these goats, how we're going to sell them, then we're going to do how to have goats. So basically what you need, like food, land, fencing, all the stuff you need to be able to house goats and keep them basically. Then we're going to be talking about a few different ways to make money with goats. What I'm going to be talking about mainly today is meat goats, but I also want to explore just the different ways you can make money through goats. So we're just going to briefly go over that. Then we're going to go the best places where to sell your goats, how much you can get for the goats. We're going to be talking to or emailing a few places. We're going to be talking to this one place which isn't an abattoir, but basically what they do, they just take your goats, so you don't need any sort of the typical procedures you wouldn't go through that you would if you were to sell to a different place. So all you do is like drive up with your goats and they'll just take them, and we're going to find out how much we can get for them, a bit more information later on. Then we're also going to maybe talk to an abattoir near the area we're thinking to move, and see how that whole procedure goes. We're going to talk to or email a few government places so they can give us some more information. And we're also going to find out the regulations for selling goats, all the procedures like I was just saying. And then we're also going to be learning a bit about breeding goats and just all the different ways you can make money with goats. And then we're going to talk about breeding goats, all the ways you do that, and just finding a bit of information about that as well. So yeah, without wasting any more time, let's begin. Alright. First up, how do you trap a goat? So before we get started, I'll just click this so you can see. Before we get started, I want to say that trapping goats isn't a super common thing, because most places don't have goats on the property or wherever nearby. But when we're on this property, he has thousands of goats on that property, and they'd always come down, and you can actually get good money for these goats. So his son decided to start trapping them. So it's basically just a paddock, and you're trying to get them into the paddock, and then when you want to sell them by the end of the week or whatever, you drive them up to wherever you want to sell it. or however you would do it. But the main idea is to trap them into your paddock, and you just come back at the end of the week and you have this many goats in the paddock to use. So option 1 is to use hi everyone, I'm making this video from the very last day of my research and the last day of researching and making this video. And today I'm just going to be making a bunch of video clips because I've been editing, watching through my video, and things that I need to add because I missed out or I didn't clarify enough or whatever. So I don't know when this clip is going to be in the video or the rest that you'll see, but just know it's the last day because I'm wearing this red t-shirt. But anyway, first I'm going to add on the trapping the goats, because all I basically said is how on the property we were staying on, the owner caught goats there because there was feral goats running around and he wanted to make a little side cash flow, and he didn't really take it seriously. But trapping goats isn't for people limited to having a property that has all the goats running all over it. So you don't have to have a property that has thousands or however many goats on your property, because what people actually do is they go to the outback, where there's a big population of wild goats. And first of all, about these wild goats, people consider them a pest. It's considered a pest in Australia because they destroy Australian vegetation that Australian native animals eat and all things like that. So they pay people to shoot them and kill them, but it's a very profitable business. So a lot of people, what they do is they go and they take semi-trailers and they get a big drone or a helicopter or something. They get their dogs and they basically just herd them all into one direction, and they get giant herds, and they get probably thousands of these things. They bring them all together, and they get like maybe 500 or 1,000 of these things. And what they do, they get their semis and they just go there one day, one weekend, and capture as many goats as they can, and they make $100,000 at a time. I'll show a video of them doing this.
Goats are different from all other feral species because big bucks can be made out of mustering them from the wild. They're loaded onto trucks and sent off to the abattoir.
And that's what people actually do as a business. They catch these wild goats because they're called the rangeland goats, these feral goats, and they sell it just like any other goat. That's how the market is mainly Australia, and 90% of them are rangeland goats. And they take them straight to the abattoir. Obviously, you need to go through the process or whatever. But that's what people do, and that's actually a good way to say you have a property that you live on that has goats. What you do, you can get like a big drone. The only problem is, when he was actually telling us, well, on this property, he had people come over, get a big drone, and basically get all the, because they travel in herds and they run together. He was basically herding them down to where he wanted them to be. He used to get a drone. The only thing, the drone used to have run out of battery and used to fall. So you can experiment and figure out the best way to do it, but that's also a very good way. I wanted to add this because I didn't mention that in the ways to trap a goat. So that's one way, to use some sort of device like a drone or something to scare them down, and you can get a lot like that, a lot of them. So yeah, I think that's going to be it for this section of the video that I'm adding to. So see you next one. Option 1 is to use a one-way door. So one-way door, you should probably know what I'm talking about. I'll maybe show a clip or a picture of something. And it's just the thing you walk in, but you can't walk out. So that's one way. And this is the second option, which is the one he was actually using, and the one I think is the best one, and that is to use a ramp. So you've got your fence like this, and there's a ramp that just goes up, and they walk up the ramp and jump in, but they obviously can't jump out because you've made the fence good enough, and they can't get back on the ramp. But the thing is, with the ramp, you can actually use it to load, which I'll explain in a second. Alright, so how you actually got to get them to want to come in the paddock, because then they just got to run up a ramp and jump in the paddock for no reason, are they? So what you got to do is, first of all, when there's already goats in the paddock, they will actually come because they see goats and they want to check it out. and because they're like sheep, you know, they just follow the other goats because they're herd animals. And the way you actually get them in there is you can use these lick blocks or lick bricks, which is sort of like a nutrient thing that they lick, and it's really good for them, and they actually really like it. And they're like wild animals; they can sense these things from very far away, so they'll go crazy for those things. And I'll show an image, obviously. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what Carl told us, the owner. He said that's all you do. It's actually not very hard at all. So that's all my information. I've basically gotten it from actual first, primary source. And I haven't really done much research into this. The ones I found was people doing this, literally chasing a goat. And he bloody fractured his knee. So yeah, obviously don't do that. But this seems like a really good way to easily get a lot of free goats. So if you're ever looking to do farming, that's a possible thing. Try find a property that actually has wild animals on there. And there's also things like kangaroos, but I hear they're not as good because you have to hunt them. Once you shoot them, you've got to then tag them and do all those things, and it ends up not being worth your while. But anyway, that's trapping goats. Anyway, now let's go on to how you got to load up your truck and take them. So obviously you want this to be the easiest way. You want this to be as easy as possible, just like we did with trapping them. So the thing with the ramp, you can just flip it into their side of the paddock, so inside, and then just reverse your ute with your trailer, and just put it against the fence, and you can use those salt bricks or leaks or whatever you call them, put them in the actual trailer, and what they do, they just walk right in, same way as before. And I'll show you some photos of some good trailers to use, and these things are compact, so you can fit plenty of them in there. And yeah, that's all you do, and then you shut the gate to your trailer and you take them off to wherever you're selling them to. Anyway, now on to the next slide. Alright, now we're on to what I need to have to hold goats, or to be able to have goats. So there's four main things, or really three. There's fencing, land, and water. And I wrote other there, so in case I think of anything, I can just add to this topic if it fits the occasion. So first, let's talk about fencing. So I've watched a lot of videos and I've done a lot of research on the fencing, because everyone says that it's quite a tricky thing to get the fencing right. But the good thing is you can always use a existing fencing. Say with cattle, you can just modify that. You don't always have to get brand new fencing. So there's a saying, they say if it can't hold water, it can't hold the goats, because we've all seen crazy things that goats can do, and they can jump really high, and you ideally want it 36 inches or 90 centimeters off of the ground, or ideally a meter plus, because these things can jump pretty darn high. And yeah, also don't have any rocks or structures that can climb and jump over, obviously. So you want it to be at least 90 centimeters high, like I just said, because these things can jump. But you also don't want the, like the grids, or like the squares of the fence, to be too big, because what these guys do, they try to stick their head through to it or get the grass on the other side, and because they've got horns, most goats, they stick it in and then they can't get back in. So you've got to basically, this happened at Carl's farm in that forward driving video. A goat got their head stuck and he had to help it out. But yeah, make sure the squares aren't too small. And I've been watching a lot of videos for the best fences. So what you want to do, they're called T-posts, or just these metal posts. The fencing, you get them every around 10 feet or so, or 12 feet. You gotta put another pole, and you want to have, they call it, I think it's called, not called, but it's 4 inches, 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter squares. And you've also usually have 2 barbed wire lines at the top or at the bottom, and that way they don't try to climb or jump or do anything like that to get out. And what else is there I can add about fencing? So say the corner post, because this usually turns in a paddock, and depending on how they are, you always need a big, strong, much more like planted in post, or usually they use like a big wooden post, get it much deeper into the ground, and you have to tie it into that. Otherwise, your fence will just start leaning, and then it becomes shorter, and they can escape. And then you've got to, once you put in the corner post, once you've already like built your whole thing, you can't really add new corner posts. So you've got to do it right the first time. Also, make sure you add the right amount of doors, because you can't actually put in doors once you've already added the fence. And make sure it's tight. And the ones that are the best, they say they use this woven or ring lock thing. Ring lock, so it's actually much more tighter, and it's flexible, and it's much more durable. And you can have metal, or you can even have mesh. But say you've got cattle fences, you can either add to it, because it might not be tall enough, but say they're tall enough, you can always just put this mesh thing. It's like a woven mesh with the 4x4 inch squares, and you can just put that over it, and that's all you have to do. With electric fencing, some people choose electric fences because they can't actually afford, because electric fences, it's not more expensive, but because they actually put less different things to set up, it's less different, it's less fence, because you only have like one here, and one there, and that's why it ends up cheaper. But there's a lot more maintenance, and if something goes wrong, it can be more expensive to fix. So probably not the best option. Anyway, just keep it simple. Just use these meter off the ground at least posts, and they actually stick in a lot in the ground. So I'm finding out it's actually the same distance it sticks out is how much it sticks in. So you're gonna have to get those things every 12 feet or so, and you use some sort of metal wire, like a woven one, 4x4 grid, and that's pretty much it. And I don't plan on doing fencing anytime soon, because we haven't moved yet, but good to know the fencing. Hi guys, I'm back, and I just want to add some quick info about the fencing, because I sort of was repeating myself but didn't actually mention that much. So I just showed you some examples of photos, but I just want to say that I know I mentioned like very specific things, like you need to have a 10 by 10 centimeter grids, but it's really whatever works, and it doesn't have to be stuff that necessarily all the same. It's really whatever you can find that works, but the main things are obviously the height, and make sure it's sturdy and tight and they can't crawl underneath. And some important things to note is if it bends too much over time, and because you don't do it at the start right, the goats will actually can start jumping over it, and they can start pushing against it. And I also wanted to add some info that I think I mentioned later when I talk about breeding. But the bucks, which is the billies, the male ones, especially if you're doing breeding, if they're big ones, you might want to keep them in a separate one that has more high-end materials, because they can probably just ram through them otherwise. So that's something to note, but depends what you're doing. If you're just catching them, it's not as important. I know that Carl was using his cattle fencing, so I don't think he had problems with them really getting stuck. They did get stuck, but they didn't really jump out or anything, because they just didn't seem to jump out that much. But obviously fencing is an important thing, because you don't want to lose the things you catch, or especially if you're breeding and you have higher quality stuff and you want to actually take it more seriously in that matter. That should be fine for now. So remember, it's whatever you can find. I know some people are using, the diamond ones, like the just the ones you see are standard fence, the diamond ones. You can use that. One very important thing, when you're making your fence, the actual fence part, the metal sheets and stuff, that has to be on the inside of the fence, so the inside where the animals are. That's very important. I think there's someone gardening outside, so hopefully they didn't bother you too much. Anyway, back to the video. Okay, land. Now, land, I want to talk about the pasture and how much you can fit per acre, which is pretty much the same thing. And then we'll talk about water and feed and stuff like that. So where we're looking, since I'm making this project specific for our needs, it's got quite high rainfall, and since goats already live there, it's a very good environment for goats, and the pasture, which is the land that they eat, is very good, because the goats, what they do, they actually eat all these shrubs and all these weeds and stuff that cattle don't. And the thing about goats, they're not just a grazing animal. Apparently, they like to browse and eat a lot of variety of things. So they're not just got to eat grass. And you want to ideally find the most appropriate land, so something that naturally be used to. And the thing about feral goats and rangeland goats, they're much more hardy, and all goats in general. So usually they have them in really dry areas. And depends where you are, but in this area, North New South Wales, it's pretty good. The grass is pretty good all year round, but I'm not exactly sure how much it would be, how much feed you would need, or if you'd need it at all. It all depends how much goats you want to cram, like per acre, for example. The typical amount of goats, they say, is around 4 to 8 goats per acre, but it obviously depends on your pasture or if you want to feed. But if you have, say, you've got plenty of space, but you only want to run this much goats, and you're willing to give up this much space, you can have enough goats to basically just need the land, and you don't have to provide extra feed. If you want to cram in as much per acre, you're going to have to do the things where you, every couple of weeks or month, you got to move the goats over to a new paddock and stuff like that, which is probably not the most fun thing if you're trying to have as least duties as possible, as least maintenance, as they say. So 4 to 8, say New South Wales, where we're looking, is actually really good. So I'd say you'll be able to fit like at least 6 there per acre. No problems, but especially if you're just catching them and you're just leaving them there, it'd be fine. Anyway, now let's talk about water. So apparently these bastards drink 4 to 12 liters of water a day, which is crazy. But and it also has to be clean water. They like clean water. They can't have still dirty water. But anyway, as long as you got a decent sized dam for your goats, it should be fine. Or ideally, you want some sort of running water, like a river or a creek, which is the place we're looking for. They all sort of have to have a river or a creek, because it's sort of a must-have for us. And yeah, that shouldn't be any problems with water. But these things, they say 4 to 12 liters per day, but apparently the owner, he says once he completely forgot and he didn't give them water because he had a different paddock and not near the river. And he didn't give them water for 3 weeks, and they're completely fine. So just because they say this doesn't mean it's actually true, but ideally you want to have them near a running water source so you don't have to worry about these things. Now, other, which is feed, which I forgot to write. But what this is depending on how you do it. But say you need feed, ideally you want to make it so you don't have any feed. And depending on where you live, if it gets snowy, obviously there's not going to be grass growing like it does in spring or summer. But what you want for feed is a mixture between alfalfa and hay, because these things, these guys need a lot of different nutrients. And also what you do to keep them nice and healthy, if you're breeding them year round, you always give them these licks, which give them a lot of good nutrients, keep them nice and healthy. And yeah, also a lot of people were saying that a good way to get this alfalfa / hay mixture is a lot of these horses that they breed for performance or whatever you want to call it, they actually feed them the same sort of thing, and you can get that stuff cheap when they have leftover stuff. So if you were looking to do that, but ideally feed, you don't want to buy any additional feed. Just keep it on your pasture and it should be fine, especially in Australia. In most places, unless you're like Victoria or something, it's quite warm all year round. Or if it's dry, a lot of people have to feed them hay. And I think that'll sum it up for what you need to have goats. I'll add anything if I forget, obviously. Alright, now we're up to ways to make money with goats. So I've only put 4 things here, but I know there's a lot more, and I've tried to make it sort of more condensed so I don't have to talk about 10 different things. But there's 4 main ways. There's meat goats, there's breeding, and you sell your goats that you breed because they're like a good like clean breed or pure breed animal, and people pay a lot of money for the bucks, which is the males that they will use to breed for their herd. You can make lots of milk products such as milk, cheese, soaps and lotions, all that stuff. And then there's leasing your goats, because goats, believe it or not, people use as lawnmowers. And you can also lease your goats for breeding purposes. Anyway, let's start with meat goats. So with meat goats, the way you do it, say you're just catching these goats or just have these goats temporarily, you can make up probably the most money from meat goats. And I know they charge, depending where you sell it, a lot of places, if they're just like a depot where you drop off your goats, they charge around half the price, but I'm pretty sure, but around $7 to $9 a kilo you can get if you for these goats, live weight. Breeders, so the best goats I've been researching a bit for breeding is there's boars, Kikos, and rangelands that, believe it or not, are quite good because they're very hearty and they're quite versatile. So I want to talk a bit about these breed goats. I'll obviously talk about them more later when we're onto that specific section. But I was watching a lot of videos, and a lot of them are American, since Australia obviously isn't as big for content and stuff like that. But for breeding, some goats were $2,000 because they're a purebred goat. And what this means is they're registered, and that's why they always say you can pay 2-3 times more easily for a registered goat, which means it has all their breeding history, and it's basically just to prove that it's a purebred or a half-bred. And the way it works with that is, say you get a purebred, say Kiko goat, which is good for meat, and you breed it with some rangeland goats, it would be 50% not registered, but 50% Kiko, and then say you breed that goat that's born again with a purebred, it becomes 75%, and it keeps going like that. So that's how the registered works, and you can get really good money, but it's obviously more time to breed these goats, and I'll talk about that in the breeding section of this video. It's a lot more complicated to breed these goats. You can't just let them roam, and then that's why I think just catching them on a property is the best way to do it if you can find a property that backs onto a national park. Anyway, milk products, like I was saying, you can make soaps, you can make milk, obviously, you can make cheeses, and we all know goat cheese is expensive, and you can probably make pet foods if you want to like start doing, actually making the products yourself. Obviously you'll get much better margins and stuff like that, but yeah, milk products are very good for goats. And there are specific breeds, so you can't just say, like I was saying, you catch these goats, you can't just start milking them and expect it to be good, because some goats, believe it or not, they're just really bad for milk, and there are specific breeds which have much more milk, and there are some breeds that have much more fat content in their milk, so they're better for butter, cheese, whatever. So I know, I'll leave it for now because I want to talk about it later. Then there's the leasing your goats. So I'm not sure how much they charge, and I'm probably not going to look into this because it's kind of pointless, but you can also lease your goats for people who want to cut their grass, or people who want to, you lease your buck, which is your male, and you lease it off and they breed, but it's not a very good option because you don't know like who your buck's really breeding with and all the stuff like that, so you have to, it's sort of like a pointless thing, especially because there's other ways to make money, but you could do that. Anyway, on to the next section. Alright everyone, now we're going to talk about breeding goats. So I'm just going to leave that like that, and I'm just going to sit and talk about it. But it's later this day. I'm still just going to try to record as much as I can today, and tomorrow I'll like finalize my info that I want to get about the processes and stuff of selling these goats and all that stuff. But let's talk about breeding, because this is a big part of it. And breeding, you can breed for obviously multiple reasons. You can breed to try to get the finest breed of goat because you actually want to sell registered purebred animals for a more premium price. But obviously that takes probably more expertise, probably takes more time and management, and it's less of a thing where you just let it take care of itself and then you just sort of collect your money, which is obviously ideal. But yeah, you could also breed the goats, just say in this case with that property, you catch the goats, but say you're struggling to catch I don't know, you want to catch 50 a week, which is a lot and it's good money, but say you want to catch that many a week and just by the end of the week sell them off. Say you want to make sure you keep the numbers and you want to have the consistency of something like breeding, but what you do, you'd build a big paddock, say, because this property has thousands of goats obviously, but say you want to have more and you want them to breed but always be in your paddock, so you don't always have to catch that much, because some things like in summer they don't come down as much and you won't get the consistency because in winter they're always near the paddocks or wherever. But you'd basically build a big paddock, which would cost a decent amount of money, but say there's already like a existing cow paddock and you start off with you catch as many as you can and you just let them breed within themselves, and since it's already in their natural environment, you're just blocking off some of it so it's where you can access them. You can just breed them, but obviously they're not going to be bred how you want them, and they're obviously just got to be the same average goats, you know. But that way you can quickly multiply your goats, and obviously they'd multiply if you don't shoot them like Carl does, but you'd have them in your paddock, and that way you could just sell off this many males or this many does every time, and it's probably the easiest way to do it. But you'd probably have a lot of obviously this happens in nature, but you'd have animals that aren't accounted for, and if you're not willing to go through every goat, which might be very difficult if you have thousands of goats, and find the ones that are just, because like I said earlier, or maybe I haven't said, some does leave their babies, which are the female ones, they have the baby, but say they choose the one that they think is the weakest one and they don't actually look after that one, so you'd have a lot of things like that. But that's sort of just letting them be in the wild how they normally are, except you're just closing it off, so when you want to sell your goats or always have them next to you to sell, it's like the easiest way to do that. Or you could breed them, just maybe not the super high quality goats, but you could just breed them to sell, because you might not have wild goats on the property, and you'd start breeding them. And let's talk about how you'd breed them. So with breeding, usually you have, like with cattle, you have one buck, or in cattle obviously it's a bull, for 20 I'd say does is maximum. And what they do once a year for probably, I'd say, I've been reading and watching videos, they say like a 3-week period where they breed them, and they want to breed them same time every year, because these guys, they're trying to usually not necessarily have registered goats, but they have good goats and they're trying to maintain good goats, because they don't sell them in as high quantity as you would otherwise. But what they do it once a year. Some goats breed all year round, but usually these goats go into heat, the does, they go into heat for a 3-week period, and they can start doing so at I think it was 8 weeks old, or maybe it's wrong, I'll put it up here because I'll double check later. And 8, might be 2 or 3 months old, they can already start going into heat, which means that it's like they're breeding, and that's when, around the same time of year, when the bucks, the males, go into rut, and they start doing a bunch of weird stuff. I'll show you a clip now. And that's when they usually kid, or that's breeding season. And the amount of goats, they always aim for a high amount of goats, because these guys do it once a year, and it depends on the maturity of the goat. The bucks can first of all start breeding much earlier on, around 8 or 7 weeks old, and that's why you've got to already remove them from their mother does and all the other does, and keep them separately. And what people usually do, they have like 1-to-20 ratio, or 1-to-10 or whatever, and they keep the bucks separately, and you need a better fence. But when they do breeding, the older they are, the more likely they are to have more kids. And what else do I want to say? when to know, like, what time to breed them. So obviously you can tell by a time. They say you want to start breeding, I think it was 8 months. You want to have minimum 8 months old to start breeding, and that's for both bucks and does minimum. But some people say they don't judge it upon their age. Oh, well, 8 months old, now you can start breeding. They judge it upon weight, and you want it to be at least, it's like full size weight, because obviously the skinnier they are, the worse the doe is going to be, and also the more likely that they're not going to be able to look after the does as well. So they might end up doing like what I was saying earlier, where they just don't feed one of the does and then it's just abandoned, and you have to bottle feed it or just let it die. So yeah, that's how breeding works. The bucks go into rut and the females go into heat, and then for around 3 week period, that's when they breed, and this is when people usually do it once a year, and they get all their goats, and they either keep trying to bump up the population of their herd, or they sell off the kids, or they if they have registered purebred animals, they sell off their bucks and even the does. And an important thing when breeding is having a really good buck. So you're better off investing into your buck, because they'll even if you don't have, say, registered purebred does, if you have registered like a good buck, they'll sort of get your herd started to being a really good strong herd, and that's the best way, they say. But you also want to pick your does correctly. You want to buy one that not just looks good, because for some reason they say this, which is kind of cliche. They're like, well, it's not just how it looks, it's also other characteristics of the goat, not just if it looks like a good one. So I'm not entirely sure what would be best, either to buy like a kid of a doe that obviously has come from a good line of does, or to buy one that's already been breeding before, and they've got good history, so they know you'll most likely bring them good kids in the end of the day. So I think that about sums it up for breeding. So I still haven't talked about the different ways to sell these goats, which I want to talk more about, so that's what we're going to talk about now. Alright, so now let's talk about where to sell your goats, and we've already obviously talked a bit about the how much you can get for them, but I'm going to do half now. I'll probably do some more tomorrow on this topic, because I'm waiting for replies from people I've contacted. So, where to sell your goats? There's a few different places you can sell your goats. So there's either you can sell it to a depot that just takes your goats, like Osgoat for example, and you're going to get a lower rate for them, but you're not going to have to do all the things such as tagging, such as deworming, and I'm obviously not 100% sure on this, so I've contacted a few people. Hopefully they can tell me a bit about how the process goes, but whatever process there is, you don't have to do it if you sell it to a place like that, but you're most likely going to get a lower rate, and it's not necessarily the most beneficial thing for you. But if it's like a sort of like a side thing, like especially if you're catching goats, it's good. That's what the previous owner was doing. He was just selling them to a place like that, where they just give you the live weights and no hassles, no worries. But there's other places you can sell, and I hear with goats it's much different than with things like sheep and cattle, which are obviously much more for the Australian market. So goats are very popular, but it's obviously more for exporting to other places in the world. But it's got to be harder to find places, abattoirs in your area, and meatworks that you can just sell direct to, which is what I'm going to find out today or tomorrow. I'm going to look at the best abattoirs, say, near the area we're looking, and hopefully I can get in contact with them and they can help us out, and we can find out a bit about which place is the best to sell to an abattoir. But you can take it to an abattoir, you can do that, but it's got to be much harder, because that's more typical for cattle and sheep, but it's definitely doable, I'd say. Then there's also a sale. So say it's sort of like a sale, like they have it's sort of like it's sort of like a market where you take it there and like highest bidder. That's how it works. And this can be for a meat goat, it can be for a milk goat, or it can be for, say, a breeder, like a high quality registered animal, for example. But obviously now with COVID, it's a bit harder to arrange those sort of things, but that's a way you can do it. There's a thing where they come straight to your property, which also may be harder to do, but they come straight to your property, and say you've got like X amount of goats, they come look at them and they choose this much, for example, and they pay you. You sort of arrange, it's either highest bid or you arrange a price, and you can get much more that way. If you sell you're selling yourself and you sell to your community, you obviously get much more than selling it to a big company or like a meatworks or something like that, because these guys pay much more because they can't just go buy it from there. So you get a lot of money from there, and depending on your animal and what your purpose for it is, it's sort of one of these things. It's like whatever people will pay for it. So it's not like a absolute price, which is a good way. But if you're doing a larger scale, that might be a problem. So you'll probably want to deal direct with an abattoir. And I'm pretty sure that's the main ways you can do it. I had something here that showed. Just give me a second. Yeah, I think that's about it. See, there's not that many ways, but that's pretty much all the ways you can sell them anyway. And if you're not using it to sell the actual goats, you sell your, say, products that you've made from them. And the thing is, with goats, depending on what your breed is, but they actually don't just value the meat. So you have to negotiate with these people, because they do sell the skin and fur and stuff like that. And the way it works, like I was saying earlier, I'll actually show a thing now. When you sell your goats, say whoever eventually gets it down to the abattoirs, either if you sell direct to them or you sell it to a place, and then they'll deal with that and decide how much the animal's worth. It's between a 1 to 5 thing. One is very skinny, one's average, and then there's one that's fat, and then there's the cream of the crop, the best one that you want, and that is obese. And that's how it works with these animals. The fatter the better, because they've got more meat. And with this, they work out a dress percentage. So average maybe, for example, 43 or 40%, and then you got fat or obese, and that might be closer to 45% dress percentage. So 45% is your carcass, which is the I'll put it up here, but it's the meat, everything they would sell, meat, bones, all that stuff, everything they'd sell like in a butcher, for example. And there's also, you could sell direct to a butcher, but obviously that's harder to do large scale. But yeah, so they rate it like this, and what they do, I'm pretty sure that 9 kilo per kilo, $9 per kilo, I'm not talking about. $9 per kilo is for the carcass weight. So say they work out, say you've got like a big breed of goats, say it's like 50 kilos, and they give you a estimate, say you've got 4 out of 5 condition, and say that's 43% or 45% dress percentage, for example. They've got to work out 45% of 50. That's how it would work. So that's 2.5, and that's 50. So they'll be roughly 22.5 kilos or whatever, and then they'll work out that, so $9 per kilo, say 22.5 kilos. Guys, everything I'm about to say, I'm not actually sure of, and I do clarify later in the video, and we do actually call an abattoir and find out more information on how it actually works. So for the next minute, I might be saying a lot of things like the processes, but I don't actually know. But later in the video, we do call and we do get information because we email and talk to many people. So yeah, bye. How much is that? 20. Let's say 23 times 9, so times 10, 230. So they'll give you like say $200 for the goat. So that way you can get much more if you do it like that. But I'm not sure for the exact numbers, like which condition rates for what dress percentage. But that way you'd get more premium price. But if you were to sell to the abattoirs, you obviously have to tag them, get all this worming and stuff done. With otherwise, if you take them straight to the depot, you don't have to worm them, you don't have to do anything like that. I just got the reply from that guy. He did say he'd have to inspect the animals, if the sick ones, and he might not pay for the sick ones, for example, and things like that. So yeah, very interesting. It's like interesting, this project, to find out all the selling ways and the best ways to make money. It's like I'm doing my own private detective work, trying to find out what the best one is. And anyway, see you next clip. We're going to be probably summing it up, and I'll get more information about the procedures and what you need to do to sell your goats. So also depending on the area, but we're going to be working on our preferred area. So see you next clip. Hello everyone, welcome back to the video. Well, you're still in the video, but it's been a few days. I've been researching further, and I've contacted a few people. I still plan on contacting at least one more person, and that will probably be an abattoir, so I can just speak to them direct and actually find out like specific for what they would do when you sell them goats. Basically, the whole procedure from their part. But I've already emailed Osgoat and they have replied, and I sent another email today asking more questions, so hopefully they'll reply soon because they replied pretty quick last time. But anyway, I contacted Osgoat and the CEO, or not really CEO, but the founder. He replied to me. I'll just get that open. Alright, here it is. So I wrote, where is it? Alright. Oh, I've actually just gotten a reply. But anyway, I'm not going to say anything now. But first, what I said was, where's the darn thing? I'll just say sent, what I wrote. That's what I'll do. Alright. So first, this was yesterday I sent it, or day before. I said, I've recently moved into a large rural property in northern New South Wales with thousands of feral goats. I've been researching. I was hoping to find out more info and how much you can get for these goats and how this process works. The goats seem to be 35 kilos, and I've seen some big ones that weigh 50 plus. So obviously we haven't moved into a property, but this is the best way to do research, so people actually take me seriously, and I can get some information before I start. And this is how I decided to do it. I said they weighed around 35 kilos. I've seen some big ones that weigh 50 plus, and that's just an estimate, but I've searched up roughly how much the feral goats weigh, and that's probably a good estimate. The previous owner was catching the goats and would easily get 80 after a week. It wasn't really that much. And I said, if someone could roughly answer my questions, it would be appreciated. Thanks, Adrian. And I've gotten a reply. Yesterday I got the reply, and I said back to him, but let me just read his reply. He said, goddamn, what? That's okay. He says, hi Adrian, we are buying goats at Glen Innes every day, and this is around Tenterfield, and Glen Innes is lower down about an hour, so it's quite nearby. And that's why I contacted Osgoat, because what they do, they just take your goats. They're actually, they're not actually an abattoir, and I think they do all the process and then they send it over to the abattoir. He says, hi Adrian, we are buying goats at Glen Innes every day. We're currently paying $3.40 a kilo live weight, and live weight is they'll just weigh there the whole goat. And for everything delivered to our depot, we can take them anytime. All we need is a goat NVD, which is like it's some sort of form you need to do to say that they're basically safe to eat, which I haven't looked into yet. He said no ear tags, and ear tags, as far as I'm concerned, they're to track all the goats that get sold, all the people it gets sold from, like the buyers and all the things like that. We weigh them on delivery, and pay you into your bank generally within 24 hours, worst 48. We can arrange a truck on your behalf, or you can drop them off. Let me know for any further questions. Looking forward to hearing from you. All the best. Philip Lynn. So $3.40 a kilo, and that's not with an estimated carcass weight. And what this means, a carcass weight, is they work out basically, it's called a dress percentage, and usually it's around 40 to 45%, and they work it out based on rating it 1 to 5 on its condition. and say it's 45% dress weight percentage, that means more of it's the carcass weight, which is what they decide basically how much they pay, and they pay on carcass weight. But these guys, they just take your goat for $3.40 for the whole goat. Alright, so I've texted him this morning and I've already just got a reply. I said, "Hi Phil, thank you for your reply. I was wondering if the price per kilo would vary depending on the condition of the goats or if I were to deliver them myself, etc. If you could also tell me a bit more about the ear tags and NVD, it would help a lot as I'm just starting out. Thanks again, Adrian." Alright, so he just replied to me now. Said, "Hi Adrian, this price I'm just reading this now first time. This price covers most goats unless they are poor or sick or lame, and then I will need to look at them to decide. This price is a delivered price, so you will save yourself a freight cost. To get an NVD, you need a property identifications code which comes with the place. Okay. The latter, I'm not sure what this is. You need to check with the LLS, local land service, if unsure. Okay. Once you have your PIC or PIC, you can go to the MLA, Meat and Livestock Australia, which is who I emailed this morning as well, website to register for your goat NVD, National Vendor Declaration, or call 1800 683 111 and ask to speak to the NVD section, option 1. All the best." Should I auto reply or should I actually write a message? I'll say, maybe I should say thank you for the information. No, I'm recording a video. Anyway, I'm going to say, I'll reply later, not on video. Anyway, I'm going to tell you what I wrote to the MLA, the Meat Livestock guys. They're sort of like the authority for Australia. Meat Livestock Australia, alright. Let me just get on Gmail. Okay. So I just wrote to their email. Alright, so I basically wrote something similar. I said, "Hi, I've recently moved into a large property in northern New South Wales with thousands of feral rangeland goats, and I'm looking to get into goat farming. I've been reading on your site and it has helped me a lot, but I was wondering if you could answer some of my questions to help me further." So I was reading on their sites. They have a lot of videos, information, because they're sort of like the authority for farming, and there was a lot of good info, but I still want to know a bit more. If someone could tell me how the process would go selling these goats, it would be great. I've spoken to Osgoat, who takes your goats for $3.40 per kilo live weight, but they tell me all I need is a goat NVD, no ear tags or anything. All I need are the goats. Say I was to take the goats directly to an abattoir or a sale, what would I need to do in terms of worming, tagging, all the necessary procedures to be able to sell these goats, as well as how much more I can get for them? If someone could get back to me, it would be appreciated, Adrian. And they sent me a auto email. It just says, automatic reply, goat farming. Thank you for contacting Meat and Livestock Australia. Your inquiry has been received and will be attended to as soon as possible by one of our specialist staff. We are happy to assist you the best way we can. If your query is super urgent, please call this number or this number to receive assistance. In the meantime, this link to our contacts webpage may be helpful. Kind regards, the MLA team. And yeah, they might take a bit longer, so hopefully they'll reply by the time this video is made, or while I'm making this video, so I can actually use it to help me add research to this video. And I'm planning on talking today, hopefully, to an abattoir near the areas we're looking at, and maybe they can tell me more specific information, which is probably the best way to do it. But it might be already a bit late since it's Friday and then it's got to be the weekend, but we'll see. Anyway, some decent information from Phil. He's helped me out a lot already. He's probably not going to tell me as much as I could get from an abattoir, because he's selling, because he's selling them from profit to the abattoirs. So yeah, it's $8 or $9 per kilo, but I'm not sure if that's for the actual live weight goats or for the carcass. So we'll find out some more information and I'll get back to you guys. Now we're going to be talking about more of the pricing and things like that, and that'll probably be today or tomorrow, so I'll see you then. I just want to record a quick clip now, just saying basically some things you want to have on your property for selling goats and the most effective way to sell these goats. So one is important is, like I was saying earlier, a good water source, like a river or creek or something like that, something where you don't have to apply additional water and all this stuff like that. Obviously you want good pasture, as close to possible as natural environment to these goats, but obviously that it can't be for everyone. But another one is good vehicle access, because if you're, and this is for any animal obviously, good vehicle access, and also good distance from a good supplier. So you want to make sure you know who you're selling to. Maybe you want to find out the best places to sell to, and that could also depend on which property you wish to buy. So good access. You want roads where obviously bigger trucks can access. So you want to take a large amount of animals, goats, pigs, cows, whatever. You may have semis going through there, so make sure it's good enough access there and not too long, obviously. So yeah, that's just a quick segment of this video. I just wanted to add a bit extra. Again, I'm recording a quick video because I'm just looking at Gumtree, so this is just like a private sale of a goat, and obviously this would be hard if you're trying to do 50 a week, but look, goats and sheep for sale. No, this one, about 42 rangeland goats for sale, so you just know, sure. Mixtures of billies and nannies, so females and males, starting at $150, cash on pickup, located this place. So $150 for a goat. So that's already more than I was quoted at Osgoat. He's saying $3.40, and for the typical goat that equals to around $120. So $150 there. Weaned goats for sale. Weaned, okay, so they're already weaned off the milk. $150. Look, 2 female goats for sale. $400. So they're already like 40%, 30% higher. But obviously there's going to be some more expensive ones. There's baby goats for bottle feeding. That's different because they obviously still need to be fed. Also I want to add, when some people bottle feed their goats because their mother doesn't take them, they usually aren't as big because they never end up as big as the ones that would be fed. So that's also a point to add. Goat shelter. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so now I want to talk about the best goats for breeding. So there's a few goats that are for meat, and there's a few good goats that are for milk. So first I'll obviously start with the main one, meat. So when you search up on Google, what are the best goat breeds to have for meat, they'll come up with boar goats, and these guys are big. They get to like 300 pounds, the males, and they're quite expensive as well if you want to buy a registered one. But after doing some research, I think these are the best, because I know these goats have a lot of worms, and you've always got to worm them, unlike a lot of other breeds. You've also got to cut their hooves, because they're same with Angus beef, with Angus cows, their hooves actually curl under, and they can't walk properly. So you obviously have to have a lot more maintenance, and that's not good if you're aiming to have a high volume thing going on. So I don't think they're the best ones. There's also the thing with boar goats, the does, they also end up dropping a lot of their kids, and they don't want to look after. Like I was watching a video that was saying that I think like 20% or like 15%, let's say 10 to 15% of the goats were just not being looked after by the does, because for whatever reason, I'm not an expert, but that's a big thing, because when so many of your goats just aren't being fed, you have to either look after them yourself or just leave them to die, So that's obviously more hassles in the end of the day. So they're not good, I'd say, if you're trying to do a large-scale operation. There's also Kiko goats, which are a bit smaller, but they barely get any fleas, especially if you got a purebred ones, because a lot of them are breeded with other goats, obviously, especially like the ones with breeded with bull goats. And Kiko's also pretty good for milk, apparently. And they're really easy to look after because they're more hearty, they say, and they can survive on harsher conditions or whatever. But they are quite a domesticated goat. This is if you want to go into specific breeding, but I don't think that's the best way to make a large amount of money. But let's talk about milk products. So I'm just gonna have to find it here. Alright, so I just remembered what it was. I just checked my thing earlier, that I wrote down earlier, and they're called Nubians. And Nubians, they're not exactly sure where they're from, but they're like a good mixture of goat. They're good for milk and they're good for meat. So a lot of people might want to do both. They might want to milk them, and then when it's time to sell them off, they sell them off for meat as well. And they say Nubian goats are really good for that. They might not be as big, but the meat is good. It's quite good for selling for meat because they've got, compared to their body, it's a good amount of meat on them. So they're good for a multi-purpose thing, and I haven't looked much into milk, but they're a good one for milk. So that's probably the one I would do. But you have to research depending on your area and also your climate and things like that. But yeah, that's just a quick thing on which breeds are good. So see you next clip. Hello everyone, this is probably going to be the last clip for the day because it's getting dark, but at least you can see this thing. But I've got information because I finally called an abattoir, and my dad actually called an exporter, and there's a lot of cool information. There's a lot of cool information from there. I'm just puffed out because I ran upstairs. But anyway, so I haven't got a reply from the MLA yet, and I just responded to Phil. I think that was his name. Osgoat I responded to, and jeez. I responded to Osgoat and I told him, thanks for the info and I'll be in touch in the future. So let's just, let's summarize what happened with Osgoat. So Osgoat, they're just a depot. They come pick up your goats and they charge you by live weight, and they charge $3.40. That's what he told me, but I'm sure you can negotiate a bit, especially if you're giving them a lot of goats. So $3.40 live weight, that's the whole goat, and on average that's around $120, $130. Obviously for the bigger goats it'll be more. And they're good because you actually don't have to do anything. You just organize it and they come pick it up for you, and yeah, so it's actually good. You save a lot of money on petrol and all hassles and everything like that. So I think Osgoat's a really good option if you're just trying to, especially if you're doing a smaller scale, if you're just trying to do the least work possible and just try to get easy money basically. Just catch the goats, they come pick it up, no worries. $3.40 a kilo roughly. And you don't have to do any ear tags, and you don't have to, you do have to have an MVD, which is something you need to get. I've looked a bit into it. You need a PIC, which is a property identification code, and basically it's just something that you need to do so it's like official and you've become like a vendor and a person who works with livestock. But that can't be too hard, and you do that on the MLA website. Anyway, so we're done with Osgoat. I've called an abattoir today in the morning, so a couple hours ago, and I called one in Kanigal, I think it's called. Anyway, it's in Queensland, around 3 hours away from where we're looking, and I just wanted to see how the abattoir works and how selling with them would differ, and I called them.
And you're looking around $8.50 a kilo, $8.60 a kilo.
And is that live weight? Is that live weight?
Dressed.
So, okay. So you just saw there that they charge around $8.40 or $8.50 roughly, and this depends on the market that I've been researching, and everyone's saying, like, today they went up $1 and the abattoirs were charging $10, but it works on the market. So the way with abattoirs is very similar to Osgoat in terms of pricing. It's how much the market is, and it's pretty much the same thing there, but you'll have to deliver them there. But the only thing, you don't get paid up front because they work with dress weights, and they'll have to cut up and get the carcass, and then they'll send you the info, and they will give you the dress percentage, and they work $8.50 a kilo, and it works out similar to Osgoat, maybe 5% more. So there's two ways of selling so far that if you caught these goats or catch goats, you could do. So there's abattoirs, and there's people like Osgoat, or people just take your goats. And I'm starting to think, if you're already doing that, like if you're already doing larger scale, there's no point going to a abattoir Osgoat. But if you were to do that, I think a place like Osgoat would be better because it's very easy and they come pick it up for you. And also, since I've called this guy, he's given me some info, and it turns out you don't need tags to sell to an abattoir either, the ear tags, because these feral animals, you never need tags for a feral animal because they can't keep track of the exact population of feral animals anyway, and the ear tags so they can keep track of all the things that bred, sold, and all that type of stuff. But that's more for non-feral animals. So yeah, my dad actually did some further research, and he called an exporter. So Australia is the biggest exporter of goat meat in the world, and the way it works, I mean, not the way it works, but the biggest supplier, or the biggest people that buy the goats are America. So 90% of the meat we export is to America, and the rest is to Malaysia and Asian countries. But because of recently, for some reason, my dad was finding out, just they don't do it to America anymore, and now it's only to Malaysia because 85% of freight has just gone. They just don't do it anymore because of COVID and COVID. Sorry, because of COVID. Now 85% less freight from Australia. I think I'm using that term wrong, but anyway, they're not shipping stuff to America anymore. And now, because my dad spoke to an expert, and he hasn't given me an exact quote, but you can get a lot more if you deal directly to the guys that export it, because they actually export live animals, so you don't need to get it butchered and then send it to a exporter. So now they deal with Malaysia mainly, and what they do, they just live export. They send them on a plane to Malaysia, and they actually want them live because it's like halal, and they want it to be like, they want to specifically cut it how they want it. So you send them live goats. So that means us, the guys, nothing's going right for me. The iPad storage is full, so I had to quickly delete some videos, and it's about to get dark. So anyway, like I was saying, us, the producer, we can sell straight to the exporters because they export live animals. And my dad spoke to him, and he was saying that you can get a lot more. And he was asking, like, how much did Osgoat say? And my dad's like, well, tell me how much you want to pay first. But we haven't got a reply yet, but he's got to, in the next few days, tell us some information, and you can get more if you send it straight to the exporter. So if you want to do a large-scale operation, it seems the best way to do so is to deal direct with the exporters who export it to Malaysia now, and they export live goats. So yeah, so obviously there's other ways you can sell, like you can sell on a sale and those other thing, and what do you call it, when they come straight to your place and pick a goat, but that's for much smaller scales, and that's probably better for people who are breeding goats. But it seems there's more money in catching goats, even if it's not on your property. You can go do that thing. I showed you guys that video of them chasing these thousands of goats and getting their V-doubles. And yeah, and I think I'm going to end this video here. So we've talked about trapping goats. We've talked about all the ways you can make money with goats. I didn't really talk about the breeds of goats, but I talked briefly on breeding, and we talked about the best places to sell. We even found out how much you can get for the best place to do it for, best place to sell it to for every scenario. We talked about what you need to do to have goats. We even found out a bit about the regulations. I sort of quit it on the slide thing halfway through once I got to breeding. But yeah, we learned a lot, and this has been one of the most productive videos so far. And maybe it's because me and Sean did it separately. We could focus more on what we wanted for the video or whatever. But yeah, there's still more info. Obviously, I'm not going to get the how much we can get for if we sell it straight to the what do you call it, the exporters, but we know you can get more than if you sell to an abattoir. And that seems like the best way, and probably what we're going to do in the future. And you do need a license, so you can't do it yourself, so it's quite hard to get a license. But anyway, this goes to sum up the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you stayed till the end, you would have learned a lot about goat farming. I know I did. And maybe you want to do farming now. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for watching, and see you next video.